Let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Meeting agenda number 2. And we have no one on currently that has reports to give. So we will catch anyone that comes on to do those as they come. The next thing is the discussion of the proposals. And I believe that goes to our chair of the Constitution, Mr. Dana Abbott.
Am on. I hope you all have had a chance to read the 3 proposals. The numerous members we had taking part in crafting these proposals did put a lot of time into it and tried to address 2 situations we feel were reflected on by the pandemic or impacted by the pandemic. And another one that we thought we ought to include, the third one, the so-called elastic clause, because we technically, in changing the setup for the conference last year, we were operating outside of the guidelines of the Constitution and bylaws. So how do we get around that in the future if something like that happens again? So that was the reason for that. I'll be happy to read it, but I hope you've already read it, and I would first like to just open up to any questions, and these can be amended, but we've spent a lot of time putting them together and working on the wording and making sure that we stay within the intent and the spirit of the Constitution and bylaws. So if you do have any questions or comments, is there a raise your hand type reaction here? Or is there reaction? I don't see a raise your hand option.
Oh, John's got one.
Okay. Or you can do this.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the committee for the work. There's, obviously we needed to address this, and I think it's positive. One of my questions is, we used to have to bring it to the floor 2 consecutive years. Don't know where we stand on that anymore. So I was hoping you guys could enlighten me. Is this a one-time vote and it goes into effect, or does it have to come up twice?
That's a good question, Don, and thanks for your complimentary words. The 2-year thing before was not actually necessary if the proposals were published prior to the deadline preceding the conference. So we stuck to that. You can, if you wanted to bring up a new, say you want to get a proposal for anything under the sun right now, you can propose it. We can vote on it to be included for next year, and that would be like your 2-year window. But if it was proposed and published prior to the deadline specified in the Constitution and bylaws, then it can be voted in this year. Were there any specific comments or questions, or does anybody need to read it or need it read to them? A glass of water, I can wet my whistle.
You're
if you need it read.
Currently talking about just proposal number 1, right?
No, I just want to know if anybody has any questions about any of them. We can limit it to 1 and then go to 2 if you like. But
I think that would be the best way to do it, so as not to confuse the issue. So if you want to give a brief description of proposal number 1.
Because this is probably going to be a short meeting anyway, so we're not going to run over. As published on the website, the proposed amendments for the 2021 annual general meeting. This is about bylaws, Article 3. The background is I'm just going to read it. The abrupt cancellation of both the women's and men's NCAA Division I swimming championships due to the pandemic shutdown in 2020, item 1. 2, the late venue change by the NCAA of the 2021 men's D1 championships from Iowa to Greensboro. And 3, the exclusion of spectators at the same said meet demonstrated that the existing language and provisions of the NISCA bylaws are not adequate to address such unforeseen events. After much discussion among the executive board and numerous members of the letterhead, it was determined that the association's best interest would be served by adding language and protocol options to Article 3, Section 1 that would allow for adjustments and/or rescheduling of the annual general meeting. Currently in effect, Section 1 reads, "The time and site of the annual general meeting of the association shall be established at least 1 year in advance, and unless voted otherwise, by virtue of a quorum of the voting membership present at the annual general meeting, shall be held at the time and site of the men's NCAA Division I Swimming and Diving Championships in odd-numbered years and the women's NCAA Division I Swimming and Diving Championships in even-numbered years." The proposal reads, bylaws, Article 3, Section 1A, "The time and site of the annual general meeting of the association shall be established at least 1 year in advance, voted by a majority of a quorum of the voting membership present at the annual general meeting," end quote. The rationale: one of the main draws for the NISCA annual general meeting, also termed conference or AGM, has been the opportunity for registered participants to attend the NCAA championships. Since the 2020 meet was canceled and the 2021 meet will not allow spectators, it would not make a difference where the AGM was held. There being no assurance that 2022 or future years would return to normal, it is reasonable to add the ability to plan for a venue that would possibly be more accessible for travel, safer by CDC and state/local protocols, and more economical for lodging and meetings. The option remains to select either the men's or women's NCAA championships, but does not obligate us to either. That's proposal number 1. Are there any questions, comments, suggestions?
I just, the 1 year piece, I guess technically if we're at a guys meet, which is typically the week after the girls meet, and we decide to change for some reason to the girls meet, we would be less than a year out. Does that make sense?
To Eve, it does. To me, I'm still cloudy.
So if we're at a guys national meet year in an odd numbered year, and we decide for some reason to change it for the,
I get it. So the women's meet would be, yeah.
Less than
we could include very specific language, which I've actually got for a new proposal for next year. I'm sorry, for housekeeping edits this year, that when we talk about 1 year in advance, I think we're talking about the end of one meeting to the start of the next meeting. If we wanted to vote to change it to the women's meet, then the start of the meeting at the women's meet would constitute the 1 year period. I think meeting to meeting is our current usage of the word year, without getting into the weeds about how many days or that sort of thing. That's a good question, Eric. Thanks.
If we wanted to just change the wording to not have to deal with this again, we could change it to approximately 1 year. Because this question has come up 2 or 3 times, and anybody who is technical.
We could say, instead of 1 year in advance, we could say 1 annual general meeting in advance.
Yeah, just change the idea there.
How many of y'all would be in favor of that? Okay.
Dave?
So we're not voting on this right now. This is just discussion. The voting actually takes place tomorrow, but I can make that and we can.
Tomorrow.
Nope. Who's in charge of this meeting?
Tomorrow being defined as the next meeting of this association.
Okay.
Which is 2 hours from now.
Dana, is there a need to put in a note or something that says it's our intent to attend? We work so hard to get a schedule to do men's and women's meets. We understand this is the provision if they don't have them, or if we need to change location. But would it be valuable to have that it's still our intent to go to those meets?
That's a good question, Don. I think the problem you get into when you say it is our intent or it is recommended or using the word should, none of those really have any teeth in them. That's why you run into the word shall and may in the NFHS rules. And, you know, if it says shall, you've got no options. If it says may, well, then you can consider it. But I think if you get into the gray areas of should, recommended, intent, it doesn't really, I don't think it's got teeth, for lack of a better term.
Well,
I understand the word, yeah.
I'm not sure it should be in a bylaw either. But somewhere we shouldn't go away from the idea that we still want to do these things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a big deal getting the first one in there. You know, there's always been a lot of resistance, I think, going to the women's meet simply for the fact that most people wanted to go to the men's meet, or the people that voted were the ones that wanted to go to the men's meet. And we are primarily a male dominated organization. So that's pretty clear. But there was some fantastic swimming went on last week, I thought, and I like watching the women swim. It's amazing to be able to hold up, you know, women's collegiate swimming to your high school kids and say, this is something you can aspire. You don't have to say, I'll never be as good as those guys. But you've got some goals here. If you see some time, say, well, you know, that those are all possible things. And I just think it's a classy show. I'd like to continue going. I'm not sure how we include that in any language, though.
I do believe, for the sake of the bylaw, that this is fairly complete and it's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on proposal number 1?
Mark Jetto has his hand up.
Where is he? Oh, it's because of that busy background, virtual background you've got there, Haas. What is your question, Mark?
Well, I have a suggested word edit for your proposal 1.
Great.
To cover the annual part, you could tuck in 1 conference year as in advance. That covers us from whenever we hold the conference.
So it shall be established at least 1 conference year in advance?
That to me sounds like an appropriate edit to solve the issue that we were dealing with on how do you define a year.
I think it would need to be annual general meeting, because that's how we refer to it in the rest of the
Okay.
Constitution.
Or
Yeah.
one general meeting year in
At
advance.
least, yeah, what I penciled in already here is shall be established at least 1 annual general meeting in advance.
Okay.
I think that meets the criteria.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I'd like to get a poll of the members present, especially those people who are still coaching, as to whether their school allows them to attend the conference being in March or at all, period. The number of people attending the conference at one time hovered around 200. The last couple of years, we'd be lucky to get 50, and that really represented only people on a letterhead for the most part, and people receiving an award. So in making hotel selections, making hotel reservations, and hotel commitment to the number of people attending is becoming extremely difficult.
Oh, now that was fast, Eve. That was real fast.
I'm on top of it. So there you go. Are you able to attend the conference in person when it's held in March?
I submitted.
Well, I'd like to open it to the
Supposed to
people here.
answer
not-
that? Are you
I
supposed to answer that if you're retired?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
submitted
You
yes.
talked before about just those that were coaching yet.
I submitted yes, but I'm in season. And anytime I'm in season, I'm missing swim meets, usually the first meet of the season, because I'm attending a conference that's tied to the NCAAs. And I know, and I'm not going to necessarily speak for Russ but when Russ and I coach together, it's the same thing. It's difficult for people that coach in the spring. I'm retired, so I could leave school, and that's not a big deal. But if I were teaching, it would be much more difficult to get out of class.
Just for clarification on these polls, even if you are not a voting NISCA member, you are allowed to answer these. So yeah, this one you're allowed to, because we're not actually making any changes. We're just looking for information. So if you didn't answer because you weren't a voting member, feel free to answer now.
I know if I wasn't on the executive board, I would not be permitted to go, but I was told this year in pandemic that I would not be going. So it has many avenues that it depends on what's going on.
Would also add that I retired from high school coaching 16 years ago, but even back then our budgets were getting hammered, and where we used to have budget categories such as professional education, conferences, and so on, those were eliminated across the board. And so if you don't have the personal funds to finance your trip, you may be out of luck that way. So it might be a financial thing. And we weren't being allowed professional days.
Exactly.
So all those changes have really, I think, impacted the problem that Tom mentioned.
I would love to see some other states follow Michigan's lead in that our Swimming Coaches Association in Michigan elects 2 reps to NISCA, and our way is paid to the NISCA clinic every year, and allows us to have our voices heard. And I feel like if we could get maybe, especially those with strong swimming states and strong associations to jump on board like that, that would be wonderful to really get the voice from across the country.
Are there any other states out there like that? Jim Star, what about Ohio?
First of all, I was framed in that case. Those remains were planted by neighbors who were trying to run me out of town.
Jim, you're muted.
We can't hear you well.
Those are in homes on my own.
Somebody else has got something going on in the background.
So can you turn that down?
It is up division school district where the Ohio guys coach to be able to go, which, as Dana and things are along those lines, and budgets have been slashed drastically.
Mike, you had your hand up. I'm sorry, Jim, you're still talking. Can't.
It's an individual thing, Dana, like you said.
Mike, you raised your hand.
Yeah, Wisconsin has the same policy as Michigan, that we have 2 representatives from our WISCA association that is, their way is paid.
How are they? They're selected by the association or the coaches association?
Yes, they are.
Any other states?
Annette had her hand up too.
I just put it in the chat, so, and I'm sending it since I couldn't get it into the talking. So there it is.
It might be interesting to see if we couldn't generate some support across the country and use Wisconsin and Michigan and any others similar to them as rationale and leverage. Get on the train or get left at the station.
Texas is pretty organized. What do they do? Do they have a similar policy?
We used to have a TISCA representative that would travel to NISCA conference. I think you know him well. He's sort of silver haired and likes to surf. I think Trey was sent most years, but they did away with that quite a while ago.
They currently will reimburse 2 individuals a small stipend amount for travel expenses that attend the conference if they're doing business with the conference to help offset costs.
Mark, let's you and me talk later about making some positive changes in NISCA regarding that. I got an idea in my head, but I don't want to take up time now. Okay, anything else in this area? Great. Okay, moving on to proposal number 2. This was building on an initial suggestion from Don Allen, who is past president and former Constitution chair. And we took the bones of his idea and modified them a little bit and came up with proposal number 2. The proposal is the annual general meeting may be held A, in person, B, in a hybrid format combining in-person and online participation, or C, exclusively online as decided by the executive board, owing to any circumstances or situations deemed pertinent to the holding of the annual general meeting. All in-person or online participants must be registered for the appropriate level of participation with the treasurer as stipulated in the current year's registration information. That basically means they have to pay the registration fee for conference attendance. The rationale behind this was it may not be a national emergency such as caused by the pandemic in 2020, but could be out of necessity for a local or regional situation such as travel restrictions, quarantine, civil or social unrest, economic crisis, etc., that the association needs to have the flexibility to make whatever adjustments are necessary to allow the fullest and greatest participation by the membership in the annual general meeting. Open for discussion, comments, questions.
I like it. I think this actually covers a lot of the potential problems that we faced coming up. And I think this has a rational solution to dealing with those, having them in the bylaws listed this way.
Don Allen's got a great head on his shoulders. He's legendary in NISCA, and he always seems to be thinking for the good of the association. I think we were all very grateful for his contribution to this. Nothing?
I agree with
I like it.
Yeah, I think it's important that we start considering doing a hybrid conference, because if there are people who cannot travel for whatever reason, but they can maybe make a meeting here or there, we can start doing a kind of 2-tiered conference registration system. Those of us who can make it on site, and then a nominal fee to attend conference virtually, and that will allow us to get the most participation that we can possibly get, and maybe have 90 people voting on proposals instead of 24.
Yeah, and I think the rationale, well, not the rationale, but the justification is in the rationale, because it refers to financial. So if you have financial difficulty getting to conference, but you still want to go, if we have something set up like we do here where it doesn't conflict with your daytime duties, that may be a great solution. So I don't think we need to make it a permanent thing. We can decide every year that we want, and it may be that we want to do this as a change for the future. But right now, this would give us the ability to do it any year we wanted to without making it a permanent thing. We could make it a permanent thing with a different amendment in the future. Great idea, Eve. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Going on to proposal number 3. This is in the Constitution under Article 4, Officers, Other Positions and Duties. This would be adding a new Section 6, which reads, when necessary, an ad hoc committee comprised of the executive board and 2 additional members selected by the president from the letterhead and or past presidents shall have the power to make any and all decisions not specifically enumerated or addressed otherwise in the NISCA Constitution and bylaws. The rationale comes right from the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 of the United States Constitution has been referred to as the elastic clause, in that it allows the Congress to deal with any situation not specifically covered in the enumerated powers and duties of Section 8. This proposal is strongly recommended for approval, as it would give the Executive Board the ability to deal with situations that are not otherwise covered in the Constitution and bylaws, such as the cancellation of last year's NCAA's and NISCA annual general meeting. Decisions made to change that we did, again, you could say illegally, unlawfully, not by the, it's unconstitutional. We did them anyway because we didn't have any other way to address it. This would allow the association to have that flexibility. Questions, comments, or suggestions, discussion? Don.
I'd like to discuss this one because I've got some questions. Would the decisions be ratified at any point? You know, after if we give this authority, do we then, does the group give their consent on them at some point after the fact? This one I have concerns because it's an absolute power piece that concerns me. Now, saying that, I have all the confidence in the world in our executive board and the decision makers, and I think they do a good job. So, but I think this year we did see that we can adapt by Zoom and still go on. So I wonder if it's necessary at this point. Just questions.
It's a good question. And I think what you're asking is, suppose we get this proposal in there, or we want to go in this direction, put it that way. And the executive board has a situation come up that is not covered anywhere in the Constitution and bylaws. The ad hoc committee is formed. They make a decision or come to a determination of how this situation needs to be addressed. And what I think I heard you say is that at that point, could it be put before the membership for ratification?
Either then or after the fact, just that everybody knows what's going on and the reasons for it.
Well, I think everything, the secretary's duties would require advising or notifying all membership of anything that was going to happen like that. Correct, Eve? Okay, so it wouldn't be done behind closed doors and then you find out about it way later. It's like we decide to do this to address an important situation, and then it's done. I'm intrigued by the idea of coming up with a solution and then putting it out to the membership for ratification. You know, maybe you go, you know, what does a U.S. Constitution amendment need? 38 out of 50. They need 75%. I think 3/4 of the states have to approve. I don't know if a simple majority of a quorum, those voting. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts and ideas about this. I think it's a good point.
I think there should be a checks and balance is all I'm pointing out.
And it's a good point. Arvel.
In most cases, if you looked at last year as a situation, if you proposal 1 and proposal 2 deal with a year in advance and printing of all registration information, and you choose which one of the ones you're going to choose. But last year, as an example, everything shut down on March 13th and our conference was 2 weeks away, and technically, and there was no legal grounds for an executive board and 2 other people to make that decision. And it would be a moot point to have a Zoom meeting to then approve that if you're already, you know, in that situation. This would be one of those kind of emergency type clauses that wouldn't even be taken care of by the Amendment 1 and Amendment 2. I understand otherwise, but as far as you couldn't have voted as a membership to have it be.
And at that case, maybe it's after the fact, we just ratify that the decision was made and everybody's informed of it. The other point I'd make is we were able to get past it this year. It might not have been by our specific rules, but we did adapt and find a way to do it.
Yeah, Tom?
I think Don brings up a very good point, and I think if a committee is established and makes a decision, that decision should be ratified at the next general meeting so that it either is continued or discontinued as the voice of the people. So I would agree with Don that committee is established, they make a decision, the next general meeting, the membership has a chance to say, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll continue with that, or we're not going to continue with it anymore.
Pete?
What would be the possibility, because I think we did that this year, in the fact that you guys had to come up with a decision, and then you actually asked for the letterhead to have a meeting. What would be the problem about having the executive board come up with the meeting, with this information or these decisions, and then much like the Senate or the House, the letterhead would be the adding factor or the deciding factor, because we can't have the membership do it. It's just too much. But I think if we had, you know, the letterhead as the ultimate decision making after the executive committee, I think that would be the best of both.
I like what Don and Pete said, and you know, maybe we can do both of them, that we could add. Does anybody have it printed out in front of them, or are you looking at it at all? Anybody? Okay, so I'm just reading it. So we could add at the very end of the current proposal, we can add a comma where it would say, shall have the power to make any and all decisions not specifically enumerated or addressed otherwise in the Constitution or bylaws, comma, subject to approval by a majority of the letterhead. How does that sound?
I like it.
One
Okay.
of the things that you're going to want to consider is it a majority of the letterhead on in a meeting, or are we doing like I guess what we call mail ballot, where I put out a link to the letterhead and say, here, give me your vote and let's see where we're at. Is it a majority of the letterhead, or is it a majority of the letterhead attending some meeting that has been
It
called?
could be something like subject to a majority of letterhead members responding to
Notification.
survey, or someone help me with the words here. Subject to approval by a majority of the letterhead who answers their email. Something classier than that.
Well, wouldn't it be
In attendance.
the president?
In attendance.
But wouldn't the president call an emergency meeting or a special meeting to make that decision? And then should it be a quorum, or should it be, because I don't think people that aren't involved in the emergency meeting should be voting. They need to listen to what the executive committee is saying and why they're saying it. And if they're not there, I don't think they should have a vote. So I think it should be a quorum of the committee of the letterhead that is at this emergency meeting.
You could, one possible conflict would be someone who's not able to make that meeting, time conflict, they got other duties or activities, but they could be it could be spelled out to them, shared with them, give them the opportunity for having input. But I think perhaps an online meeting like we're doing right now might be a solution. Hopefully we'd have more than 24 hours to plan something like this. Tell you what, let me work on some language and bring it up in a later meeting, like 3 o'clock.
That might be
Which would be
something to
tomorrow.
consider. Timing might be something to consider as well. So if the executive committee has to meet, and then we have to get approval from the letterhead committee, how much time between the decision being made and the meeting and or polling that's got to happen, how much time do you give?
We're
Is
thinking if it's
there-
an emergency situation, you may be talking about 48 hours.
So no sooner than 48 hours.
Well, I
Something
think we
like
need
that.
some flexibility. If it's
Yeah.
something that demands our attention, it might be, you have 6 hours and then let's do it. I don't think I'd be so specific that we tie our hands.
Right. Well, and that's something to take into consideration too, because if we have to do it quickly, it might just be easier for the secretary to send out an email to all of the letterhead that says, here's the situation, here is a synopsis of the discussion, here is our decision, here is a link to the poll. You have to answer this in the next 24 hours. If
Something
it's
else.
not as time critical, it's something that we could say, hey, in 1 week we're meeting, we're going to tell you about this, and then we can do a Zoom meeting and do a poll then.
Well, the other thing about these, excuse me just a sec, about doing these meetings is like you're doing right now, we're recording this.
Mhm.
So we can tell them if you're not able, you letterhead people, if you're not able to make this meeting, a link to the video or the audio of this meeting will be provided, and we will need your response within time frame.
Dave, would you also,
Dana?
would you consider adding Tom's suggestion of all decisions shall be ratified at the next conference?
That confuses me.
I think ratifying something at the next convention, we're looking at, I think what we're talking about are these one-off situations, or it may not affect us beyond that instance. So I think going with Pete's suggestion of approval by the letterhead being the actionable majority decision here is a good.
Do these resolutions become precedent then, and they stay on forever? Because it's a one-time thing.
The only thing that's forever, and it's not forever, are what's in the Constitution and bylaws.
Right.
If this was an executive board decision with the approval of the majority of the letterhead responding, it would be to take care of that situation, not meaning that if everybody has to wear a red party hat at the next meeting, that doesn't mean the next 20 years we have to wear red party hats. So I think it would be to address a specific and hopefully one-off situation.
These are really emergency situations.
And
They are.
and if it is something that looks like it's going to continue into the future, for example, what we're doing here today with the pandemic response, then it would be brought up at the next annual general meeting as a proposal for the Constitution, and then that gets put into the bylaws permanently. And if it's not something that's in the bylaws permanently and it is just a one-off, then we do it the 1 year and then we forget about it.
Maybe I have a problem with the word when necessary, I guess. In extenuating circumstances might be a better way of approaching it, because when necessary is anytime you want.
That's a valid point.
When extenuating circumstances require.
Yes.
Which was what we did last year.
Yes. My concern would be, you have to make sure when you say letterhead, is it going to be one position, one vote? Or is it going to be one person, one vote? Because several of us have multiple roles on the letterhead, could unfavorable, skew a result. So, you know what I'm saying?
It's always one person.
But we need to make sure that's clarified in there, because I've seen situations at when I used to coach club, when it would be LSC decisions on people in positions that had multiple roles.
We don't
Say,
want
"Oh,
to
I
give
got-"
Peter 3 votes. I'm sorry, Pete. We don't want you to have 3 votes.
So that's one thing we should make sure we have clear in there. And if a member of the letterhead cannot attend, do you want to include a member designee by the letterhead in their placement at the meeting? Remember,
Not so
or
sure.
you just want to keep it at letterhead?
Well, the letterhead is the people that are committed to our organization, who are going to understand what's going on.
Okay.
Best. I think you have to have some sort of commitment.
Yeah, I would be against saying designees.
Okay.
It has to be the person in a position or committee chair or an elected officer. I've added, and I might play with this, to start the proposal with, when extenuating circumstances demand, comma, an ad hoc committee comprised of blah, blah, blah. And at the end, add a comma and subject to approval by a majority of the letterhead.
In attendance.
How about the voting letterhead? That way we can be in attendance either on a Zoom meeting, or I can send out a link to a Google form and
Or
we can vote
of
there.
letterhead voting, not
Yeah.
voting letterhead.
Yeah, okay.
Letterhead voting. I'll play with that because I see.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's consistent with the voting members that we have in other places in the Constitution.
Could also put one person, one vote.
Parentheses. Yeah. That's good. Okay, between this meeting and meeting number 3, I'll come up with something to throw to you again. I think we're looking at the same group of people. I don't think we're going to have a whole different audience for meeting number 3. So I'll put this out there. Is Eve, when we come back, can you make me co-host and I can share a screen of the document or the language that I'm going to be working on in the next hour?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, if you have it somewhere where you can share a link to it, I can put that in the chat so that people can pull it up on their own.
I can send you the language and you can do with it what you do.
Okay.
Do your magic. Okay. Anything else? Don and Pete and Tom and Arvel, great, and Mark, great participation and comments. Thank you. And I just want to say one more thing. Hi, Art. Cole, did I just see that Edina won another state championship? Yeah, amazing. Just amazing. Okay, I believe I'm done, Diane.
All right. I believe next on the agenda are our speakers for the position of treasurer and president-elect. And would Mark Jettout please give us your little speech on why you would like to become our president-elect?
Okay, well, 10 years ago, somebody had asked me what I'd be doing. I think the furthest thing from my mind would have been running for the position of the head of a national office for the Coaches Association. I mean, when I used to think of NISCA when I was growing up, I mean, the leadership of NISCA, I thought about coaching legends. I mean, I think, you think about the programs that always were way up in front, that were leading programs in swimming, would be the heads of these organizations. And so, I mean, I was thinking back, I knew Lanny, I knew Dana from way back in their leadership at the state level, then watching them grow at the national level. So when I really started thinking about, when someone asked me if I would even consider running for this position, I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think I'd be close to being ready for this type of level position. But after thinking about it, I said, okay, what does it mean to me to be running for this? Why do I want to be president of this organization? And I really kind of hammered it back down to the 3 things I had listed at the very end of my introductory letter. First, to honor those coaches and that influenced me growing up as an individual, as a coach, to provide me the opportunity and skill to be the coach and teacher that I am today. That's one reason. Second is to continue to promote education in the organization. As a teacher, I love working with other coaches and teachers. In my district, I'm kind of still the go-to guy when people have questions, whether it's TISCA, NISCA, stroke drills. And I think that's the part that we need to continue and offer with our program. I mean, our wealth of resource knowledge to help the youth and young coaches, not just on skill, but on character development for our athletes, is tremendous. And I think we can do a lot more coming down the road, bringing up the younger generation. And lastly, just continue to serve. I've always been a service-minded individual. From even my youngest days as a coach, people have asked me to help out. I remember when NISCA had that call for help that came out a few years ago. My aquatic director and I sat down and he goes, Mark, NISCA's got some positions open. I said, yeah, and I was thinking about it. He goes, do it. And so I had the opportunity to contact with Arvel. And at first I thought, Arvel's I was kind of thinking maybe the Zone 6 director would be a good spot for me. And Arvel's going, oh, no. I got something else planned for you. I've got somebody else in line for Zone 6. What do you know about All America? So I was like, okay, I'll give it a whirl. I'm good with computers and I've got good with spreadsheets. I could probably get this all figured out. So Arvel giving me that opportunity. And then 6 months later, Mac McDonald goes, Mark, I can't really do the Zone 6 stuff. I've got too much on my plate. Do you think you can do it? And so I absorbed that one in there and said, okay, I'll make a run with it. So, and then even on our own state association, I've been our zone, our region director for a number of years, and they've moved me up from secretary, and now I'm vice president of the Coaches Association. So I'm a very service-oriented individual. I think I have a lot to offer the association. I think I've been a very positive contributor so far. I know I'm working with Tim and Diane this next couple of years to grow me into the presidency. If I am selected by the membership for this post, it's going to be a big learning curve over these next 2 years to be ready to take position, but I think I'm ready for it. I think I've got the knowledge behind me. I know I've got this group that would be behind me in the organization, because you guys are tremendous in what you do, and the perspectives that you provide on the various issues that we face is amazing. And I think more coaches out there need to realize what we really have to offer is this world of experience that we have, this life experience as coaches, because there's so many young people that come in that they're so lost. They don't know what to do. And I think we need to find a way to make more of those personal and individual connections like we used to. There was a time where it was very common for coaches just to meet up in somebody's garage and sit around and have a beer or two. And for some of us, we all like to do that now in our little happy hour on the Zoom, but I think we need to find ways to do this a little bit more often once we get back out into the real world. But I wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity for me to run for this position in office, and I look forward, if elected, to lead this organization down the road.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was very nice. Do we want to have Tom address us now as treasurer?
Absolutely.
Just a quick note, we do have 5 minutes before.
5
we have to
minutes,
start
that's
our
all I have.
No, you have 2.
We have 2, okay.
Well, I just want to say that I really have enjoyed being your treasurer for the last whatever number of years. In, I guess it was 1992, Rich Hood was president, or becoming president, and there was some difficulty in the years preceding my taking over the treasurer. And I said to Rich, I'd be happy to do it, but you have to understand, I'm really not a numbers person. I'm really not a CPA or an accountant, and I have no background in that whatsoever. But what I will bring to the forefront is that you can rest assured it will be an honest accounting of the money that comes in and the money that goes out. And I've lived up to that premise for all the years that I've been a treasurer. And I earmarked right from the get-go that I thought we should not give away our money. And we've done that and changed many of the programs, probably no one here remembers that the All America program, we're giving away all of its money. And one of the first things that I did was take the All America program into the realm of NISCA, and not at that point the Hall of Fame, which was getting all of our money. And that immediately changed the concept of our bank balance. When we dealt with Speedo and trying to get sponsorships, I remember a meeting at one point, and at the meeting, Speedo wanted to know what we thought their sponsorship should be, and I told them I thought $50,000, and everybody thought they thought, sit back, forget about it. At that point, they were giving us about 15,000, and we were spending over 15,000 just in our commitment to them. And I explained that to them. We were, you know, the mailings, they wanted to put their big catalog in it, and it was costing us 15,000 to send out the catalog, let alone, you know, anything else. So we've changed, and I think that's been a benefit to our organization, and we've been able to I also thought that we should establish an account in which we would have enough money to run our organization for a year if we lost all of our money. So I started to deal with the bank where I lived, and it was a local bank, and I knew the president, et cetera, and it got a good CD rate. And we established a CD. That CD now has $137,000 in it, which is enough money if we were to lose all of our finances for a year to be able to survive with all of our programs intact. CD rates have gone down. Our rate has gone down, but not down to the rate that most of you people get. And fortunately for me, we're still dealing with that bank in Bayonne, whose president sister was one of my first swimmers back in Bayonne in the 60s. So we have a good relationship there, and I'm able to continue with a decent rate. But once again, every money that comes in is deposited the next day. Any money that goes out is established with a form that shows where the money went to and who it was for and what it was for. So everything is above board, and I think that's the way the treasurer should work, and it does work, and I'm happy that you people have re-elected me to another 2-year term. Thank you.
Thank you.
2 o'clock, and I finished on time.
We do have another meeting starting, and I have already talked to 2 of the people that are on this as an election committee or a vote counting, and that is Annette and Eric. I do not see the other person that we had discussed with.
I'm not sure we're going to need an election committee because
I'm
there
not
aren't
so sure
people
either.
that we're voting for. It's
Right.
it's an up or down vote at this point. So
I think we're all set for that. So
Can we vote by acclamation?
Not till the next meeting,
Okay.
2 meetings.
in the next
No.
meeting,
1 hour.
let's log out of this one and log into the next one.
all right, see y'all at the rules meeting.
Thank
See
you.
ya.